Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse podcast. I'm Nick Dawson, editor-in-chief of Talkhouse Film. On today's show, we have two artists who are carving out careers for themselves as writer-directors after finding success in other creative fields, Bonnie McKee and Carlson Young. McKee is a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter who released her debut album Trouble in 2004, but who is maybe best known as a hit songwriter. She has penned 10 singles that have made number one in either the US or the UK, and is a favourite collaborator of Katy Perry, who she worked with on songs like California Girls, Teenage Dream, and Roar. She's also written songs with, well, pretty much anybody who's anybody. Britney Spears, Adam Lambert, Carly Rae Jepsen, Kesha, Rita Ora, Ellie Goulding, Kelly Clarkson, Avril Lavigne, Charlie Puth, and Lauren Gray. McKee, however, used her quarantine time to switch gears, creating the short film April Kills the Vibe, which she not only wrote, directed, produced, edited, and scored, but also plays multiple roles in. It's a powerful, but also deft and funny film based on the true story of McKee's sexual assault and how it led to her seeking 12-step recovery from her alcoholism. April Kills the Vibe is now playing on the film festival circuit. That is the COVID version of it, which exists almost solely online. And a fellow traveler in that world is a friend of McKee's, Carlson Young. Young first made her name as a television actress, guesting on shows like Pretty Little Liars, True Blood, Key and Peele, and Grimm, before playing the lead role of Brooke Maddox in the small screen adaptation of Scream in 2015. Young has always been a writer as well, studying creative writing at USC, and in 2018 she wrote, directed, and starred in the horror fantasy short The Blazing World, which was inspired by imagery that came to her in recurring dreams. Capitalizing on the success of that short, she turned The Blazing World into a feature, which she, just like McKee, shot during COVID. The film, which stars Young, Dermot Mulroney, and Udo Kier, premiered at Sundance this past January and will be out later this year. In their conversation, the two multi-talented friends talked about each of their recent journeys behind the camera, their experiences during, as they put it, this dumpster fire of a year, how they both made their movies as a form of psychodrama, Bonnie's upcoming music-inspired project which builds on April Kills the Vibe, and the rough time Carlson and her husband, Foster the People keyboardist Isom Innes, had recently when they moved.
Hi, Carlson. How's it going?
You know, it's actually been a really shitty week because we moved, as you know, and the moving company is a scam and stole all of our stuff.
What?
Yeah.
That's a thing? How? Where did you find them?
Well, it's a really long story. We've had a storage unit with these people for the past 2 years because we've been like all over and have not been really settled down. So yeah, when we our moving date was last Wednesday, and they just kept having like excuses as to why they, were late and flat tire and all these things. And then by the time they showed up, they pull up in this truck and I'm like, there is no way that is all of our stuff. Like we have like a semi's worth of furniture and just the whole 9 yards. And they start unloading things that are not ours and just different, like things I've never seen in my life. And then bringing in kind of like some stuff is ours. Like we have our bedroom furniture, weirdly enough, and then like a table and chairs. And then we salvaged like kind of our gallery wall stuff, but everything else, 85% of our property, everything is like MIA, and the people have like blocked us and like aren't answering or anything like this. So we have it's so unexpected, just blindsided. I'm like moving, yeah, it's gonna be really stressful, but yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
Could not have predicted this one. And apparently, I mean, the more research that we do, like these moving scams are a real thing. And apparently they've really blown up during the pandemic of like so many people moving and like taking advantage of this situation. So I don't know.
I'm so sorry. Oh my God. That's
okay.
insane. So can you like take him to small claims court?
Yeah. And like the LAPD has been, just so unhelpful. Like it's really disturbing that when you actually need help or you need somebody to help you, they're just there are so many hoops you have to jump through. But yeah, it does technically fall into civil court. So we have to go to the
Mm-hmm.
courthouse. We can't file a police report. Obviously, we need that police report to get any kind of insurance.
Right.
It's just like,
Oh
whew.
my God, I'm so sorry. Well, did you have like your computers and stuff with
Thank
you?
the Lord, yes. But like ISIM has 10 years worth of hard drives and laptops and
Oh
all
my
of his
God.
music stuff. Yeah, I mean, like luckily he has most of his gear, but there's just like we were making an inventory last night of everything, and it's just très depressing.
I'm so
We're like,
sorry. Oh my
no,
God.
it's
I
okay.
can't imagine losing hard drives is really
Hard drives.
crazy.
Yes.
Really
Yes.
crazy. Pictures and songs
Yeah.
and samples. Like, I mean, your whole life lives
Yes.
on a hard drive, which always scares me, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's why I write all of my lyrics in journals, like in physical
Uh-huh.
journals, because I'm so terrified of that happening. Like I had a list of song titles in my phone, like just a big ongoing list. And I like lost my phone, did the find my iPhone thing, something like that. And like a bunch of my shit got wiped. And I lost like a whole year's worth of ideas that were like in the middle of a breakup. So, you know, they were great ideas, you know,
Mhm.
and I was like
No.
devastated. Oh my God. It's the
The
worst.
suffering.
Yeah. I don't trust technology anymore.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean, and I don't trust people anymore.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I know what you mean also about the police not being helpful when you actually need them. Like someone tried to break into my house in Silver Lake, and I had them on camera, on my Ring camera, like look through my bedroom window, see me sleeping, and then try to open my sliding glass
Oh,
door.
it's terrifying.
And like I left like 3 messages at the police station. No one called me back
No
ever.
one.
I'm like, I have him on
Scary.
camera. Like,
That is so scary.
yeah,
You know,
terrifying.
that is not okay.
No.
This dumpster fire of a year.
Right. You're like, just when I thought it was over.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to talk about films and art and music and all that fun stuff. So I made my film, April Kills the Vibe, in quarantine, speaking of a dumpster fire of a year.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the highlight for me, where I felt like my year wasn't completely wasted, you know?
Yeah.
I definitely had a good 6 months of just like being rolled in fetal position on the couch. But it gave me something to do. It kept me busy, and I'm glad I have something to show for it. But your film was much more involved than mine, and looks like it took a lot longer to make.
We also shot it during quarantine.
You did?
We wrapped essentially September 1st. So we
Mm.
shot it in August in a little quarantine camp like outside of Dripping Springs in Austin. And yeah, no, it was definitely not a film that was engineered for the pandemic in any way, shape, or form. We had limited crew and resources, and it was a low budget ish. So yeah, it was just like you said, there was the 6 months of like, because we started going to pre-production like in beginning of March 2020, and then we had just attached our first actor, and we were all very excited, and we're like, it's happening. And then the world changed, so there was like a 3-month period of kind of regrouping and realizing though with the script that this was a movie that we could shoot during COVID, because it was never more than 4 people in a house essentially. So I rewrote parts of the script and took us out of the any sort of public place, and yeah, like it was a full quarantine movie.
When you told me that you had made a film, I was like, oh, cool. She sent it to me, and I was like, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was not expecting like a sci-fi fantasy epic saga. And I was so pleasantly surprised. Yeah, it was just not what I was expecting at all. Like, first of all, it doesn't look like a low budget film at all. Like I was like, damn, like they really went in on that. Yeah, it looked incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we just had an amazing, production designer and team, and had a really kind of unorthodox way of engineering it all and keeping it as safe as we could, and trying to put as much weirdo, cool production design as we could to elevate just the overall production value of the film. But we did have over 250 VFX shots as well. So, anything we couldn't accomplish practically, and we could have, like going into this, I wanted to do everything practically,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but practically is actually more expensive, and it can be more expensive, and more people, just more people on set, which we couldn't have because of, the restrictions. So a lot more had to kind of be directed into VFX than I would have liked. But thank you. I thank you for all the things that you said, that I will receive that. It was challenging.
Yeah, I am a big fan of practical illusions as well. I made a music video years ago called Stars in Your Heart, with my friend David Richardson, and it was a Barbarella themed music video.
Awesome.
And like I've seen other pop stars do that, but everybody did like the VFX thing. And I was like, I want to build a proper like optical illusion set. So we built a spaceship on the ground and shot from above. And
Cool.
I was on like a swivel stool. I was just like had my lower back on a swivel stool, and they tied fishing wire to my legs and just pulled me around so it looked like I was floating. And there was one point where I was laying on a skateboard and just kind of like pushed myself off the wall, and then it was like, oh, look, I'm floating up now. Like, it was so much fun, but it was expensive and time consuming and difficult.
Right.
So
yes.
I totally understand like the passion about the practical sets and stuff, but also just that under the circumstances, how impossible that would have been to do,
Yeah. I mean, you should have seen the first draft of the script. It was big sci-fi fantasy. And so kind of finding the scale and dwindling that and pulling that back, like just to be able to shoot it during this time was, it actually worked. I think it lent itself to the claustrophobia of the character and sort of the dream surrealism too. We prepped it to high heaven, and I, had been conceptualizing everything for over a year. So it was pretty seamless getting it all up off of its feet. Obviously, if we had more time, more money, all of these things, but I'm really pleased with what we were able to do.
So where was the inspiration for the story from? How did you come up with this?
I was interested in exploring childhood trauma through the fantasy, horror lens. I mean, all horror, right, is sort of unpacking and analyzing some sort of trauma. But I personally fell in love with cinema and storytelling from Tolkien, from, directors like Guillermo del Toro, and through that lens, it was a really huge escape for me as a child. And I definitely like kind of grew up in a tumultuous environment. And so I started thinking a lot about early childhood trauma, learning about it, going to healing trauma centers, exploring trauma therapy. The more I learned about it, the more intrigued I was, and really wanted to craft a story about overcoming the moment where your inner child dies, or the light goes out and you no longer see the world the same way.
Right.
And through, kind of like group therapy and psychodrama, which is something I discovered in this process, which is like the whole Blazing World feels like one big psychodrama. I don't know if you know anything about psychodrama, but
can you give me a brief rundown?
It's where you like act out your trauma and like.
Oh, well, that sounds like exactly what I did with my film. So
yeah, totally. April Feels Defiant is psychodrama. Like you know, in a safe, controlled environment would sort of set the scene and have the conversation that you need to have with the person who did whatever to you. And the way, I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to do this, and I'm just explaining my experience, but you really set the scene and you kind of enlist the people that are in the room with you to play X, Y, and Z. And it's very cathartic. It's an enormous release, and it's really, really quite profound. And so the more that I did some of that work myself, and then watched other people do it, I realized how universal childhood trauma is, and that a lot of times, like, the other traumas that happen in our adulthood are things that have its roots in earlier places in our experience, in our childhoods. And then I started learning about just what neuroscience says about all of it, and learning about the when and where and how your brain develops at what age, because my mentality has always been, why can't I get over this stuff? Like, I was 8, or like I was 4, I was 12. Like, come on, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I still like plagued by these things? And the answer is like, because like it's it happened when your brain was developing.
Yeah, yeah,
And because trauma doesn't have a sense of time. Like, that is a really big thing, that trauma does not have a sense of time. So you could be living your whole life in a trauma response and not even know it, which is really scary. And
yeah.
that was the catalyst for the character of Margaret. Like, the jumping off point was like, she's lived her life in a trauma loop. And
Hmm.
so when she goes to take her own life, she has like this chance to like enter fully that trauma loop and overcome it and like slay the demons that live there. So
Right.
yeah, but it's interesting. Like, April Kills the Vibe is total psychodrama too.
Yeah, it's funny. When you said psychodrama, I was like, is that a genre of film? Because that's what it sounds like.
It should
And
be.
I think it kind of is, you know?
Yeah, it is.
So April Kills the Vibe is based on a true story of something that happened to me. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. I'm 9 years sober.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I had a lot of trauma in my drinking days, you know?
Mhm.
And this was just one of those rock bottom moments that led me to looking for help and changing my life, you know?
Yeah.
So reenacting this, if you haven't seen the film, I mean, I know you have, but just for people that are listening, I was sexually assaulted in a blackout. And then I woke up the next day and I called my friend that I was out partying with to kind of figure out what the hell happened, because I didn't remember anything. And I was met with like slut shaming, and it was just like an ugly conversation that kind of like ended our friendship, you know? And when I was writing it, it ended up being a lot more cathartic than I thought it would be. I was like, I just want to, I started out doing this in quarantine because I was like, well, I've been wanting to do a scene for my acting reel, because I haven't done a whole lot of acting. And so I'm like, well, let me get some more stuff on there because I want to get more into that. And then I have an amazing acting coach, and I had some scenes that I'd done in class and that had gone over well. And I was like, I'm just going to try this. And I was like, you know what? I wasn't connecting with me, you know, like it wasn't speaking to me. And that's been like my experience, in my limited experience with acting, is that every time I read a script or whatever, I'm like, I want to change everything. Or I'm like, I think it should say this. I think it should be like this, you know? And so I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to write my own scene. So I started writing it, and all of a sudden it was like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, right. This is a short film. This is not a scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it ended up being a lot more cathartic than I expected it to be. I was like, I just want to make like an acting reel, whatever. And then I ended up like completely delving into my past, reliving this trauma, going into psychodrama therapy. And, you know, it was empowering being on set, reenacting the morning after, where April goes into the bathroom and realizes what had happened. I kind of felt like I was cheating as an actor, because it was based on a real experience. I already had those raw emotions right under the surface.
No, not cheating.
Well, I mean, you know.
That's just good. It's just,
Well, thank you.
I don't really understand actors who don't seriously source their own stuff.
Right.
Their own trauma. It doesn't seem, I don't get that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like, look, I mean, you're a trained actor. I've had some training, but I mostly am just like a play pretend kind of person. And I know there's like a million ways to skin a cat, you know?
Yes.
But just, this was so much fun for me, because I really got to sink my teeth into something and show my range, especially playing 2 different characters in the film.
Yeah. And that was so seamless.
Oh, thank you.
The 2 characters. I had to like kind of stop and be like, wait a second. Because you can just totally morph. I mean, yes, they're the acting, but your look too. I was like, wow, that's really it. Seriously, like, I did a double take, because I didn't. Yeah, I waited for the credits to make sure.
Yeah, it was fun for me. I mean, I love playing dress up, and Halloween is my favorite thing of all time. It's like, might as well be my birthday. I take it very seriously. And I was very self-conscious about playing 2 different characters, because that's like a little bit of a trope and a little bit of a gimmick, you know? And so everything down to like the manicure that Lola had versus April. And I wore colored contacts, and I did like self-tanner all over for Lola. And I was like really dedicated to like looking very different. I was so terrified that it would be like, what is this bullshit of this girl just like talking to herself, you know?
No, it didn't read that way at all.
Well, thank you. That's a relief to hear.
Did you find playing the other character, did you learn anything about the friend and like any sort of empathy that was born, or the opposite?
No, absolutely. And that was the most healing part. Because when I was writing the script, first of all, I didn't plan on playing both characters. It was like, because it was kind of born out of necessity at first, where I was like, well, it's the quarantine. Like, I don't know who would play this. Nobody wants to. It was like right in the beginning of it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was worried about getting actors. And I was also worried because I'm such a control freak. I'm so meticulous and like OCD. I was worried about not getting the performance that I wanted out of this like very personal story of mine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But when I started writing the script and thinking about the motivations of each character and thinking, you know, because when you're writing each line, it's like, what's underneath it? What's the motivation behind, why is she saying this, you know? I had a lot of empathy for Lola, and it made me completely rethink Lola's experience in my situation.
Wow.
Because like at the time I was a fuck up alcoholic addict nightmare. I was a sloppy buzzkill nightmare, as Lola says. And like for me to expect someone to take care of me in that state, especially when I'm like that all the time, that's not fair. Like that's completely codependent. That's completely like me not taking responsibility for my own safety. And I also realized in writing this, which was so ugly and uncomfortable, that I had kind of been in the same situation with another friend who had gotten drunk.
Wow.
My roommate years ago, it was her birthday. We all went to a bar that was just like a couple blocks away from our house. It was all of her childhood friends were there. Lots of people were there. I was trying to get sober at the time. So I ducked out early and was like, all right, see you at home. There's like 10 people here that you know and love. And then when I woke up the next morning, like a strange guy left her bedroom. And I was like, oh, like little birthday one night stand. And she was like, no idea what happened. What the fuck? Why did you leave me? And then I was like, oh, like I thought you were okay. Like I didn't know it was my job to babysit you, you know?
Right.
And so like it like brought back this other thing where I was like, fuck, I've been on both sides of this conversation. And so it was important to me to play both characters, not only to hold myself accountable for my own part in like not being dismissive, but just being defensive, where it's like, well, what the fuck? This isn't my job, you know? And also to learn to forgive Lola. And I did. It was amazing. I was shocked.
Wow.
I was like, fuck,
Wow.
this is so healing, you know?
Yeah.
It was really cool. And then also it was funny, you know, when I showed it to friends, even like girls that I know that have kind of been in similar situations. And by the way, every girl I showed it to was like, yep, same. Like we've all had some kind of form of this.
Oh yeah.
I still got some responses from people that were like, you know, at first I felt bad for April. And then when Lola started talking about all of the like slutty shit she had done, I was kind of like, well, and I'm like, oh, well, so she deserves to be assaulted while she's unconscious? What the fuck? You know?
Yeah.
So that was really what I want. The conversation I wanted to have was about consent. And how people assume that if, you know, I know that sex workers have a lot of that sort of slut shaming stuff too, where it's like, oh, well, you're a sex worker, so you're asking for it. And it's like, no, there's still consent involved, you know? And so that was kind of the conversation that I wanted to have. And I was shocked that so many people still reacted the way that I didn't want them to.
I think the through line, if there is one, like between April Hills of Vibe and Blazing World, is like that internalized misogyny of like why a woman would have that reaction to her experience of, yeah, well, you know, she kind of was asking for it. It's like, you learned that sometime in your life.
Yeah.
Like the next feature that I'm doing, don't know when, hopefully this year, but called Feminine Knox is so all about this. Again, it's a 12-year-old, so not exactly the same time period, but it's about when a girl learns about their female identity in the context of, you know, our modern society. And like I vividly remember, and this is in the script, but I vividly remember like seeing a sexual assault on the news, and I'm not sure, there was, I don't know if it was my dad or some like male authority figure. We were watching it, and you know, they said, well, that's why you don't walk around alone at night.
Yeah.
And you're like, I was a child, so I was like, okay, didn't think anything of it. But I look back at that now and I'm like, that is such a fucked narrative.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
really?
Yeah.
And it's just true. And the way people interpret the subjectivity of sexual assault now is so directly related to the representations of, women that they grew up with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, being intoxicated while female is like having a target on your head.
Yeah.
And people automatically are like, well, you shouldn't have done that. And I like that I've seen more recently in culture, people having the conversation about like, can we start telling the boys not to rape the girls maybe instead of telling the girls to not get raped?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have problems with addiction and whatever, and I just know that that's not good for me. But isn't it sad that as a female, I can't just get blackout drunk and be like going about my business? You know what I mean? Like, why does that have to be dangerous?
You're vulnerable and dangerous.
Why do I have to be in danger automatically because I want to have a wild night,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gnarly. I really went through like the whole cycle of trauma all over again, going through like asking all these big kind of existential questions and about our society and my role in it. And yeah, it was pretty heavy. It was kind of like a dark, weird time, especially like being in the pandemic and everything that was happening in the world and on the news. And it was just like very intense time to be like delving into this trauma.
Yeah. And I think you probably weren't the only one, I mean, it's like it's like this whole like isolation of 2020 / beginning of 2021 is like you're looking in the mirror because you can't really do anything else.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, I hope that people, I don't know, it's been depressing, but I don't know. The only way out is in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been a depressing, insane year and a half, but it's also been beautiful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because I think people are forced to, like you said, look in the mirror and sit with themselves. And, with all of the Black Lives Matter stuff and the protests, and people really taking a look at themselves. And I think that if we weren't all stuck in our houses looking at the internet, we probably wouldn't. It'd be easier to just like go about your life and just keep on living the way you were, because that's just not a problem I have to think about,
Yeah.
So there was like a beauty in that as well, a beauty in the breakdown,
For sure. And growing in profound discomfort is kind of a given.
Yes.
We know that this is how you grow. So as uncomfortable as it's been, I think that, I do think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. One thing I really wanted to talk about with you was just your transition. I mean, obviously anybody who is listening to this knows that you're like an iconic songwriter. So how did you know that you wanted to transition and, take this stab at directing as your directorial debut? And then do you have other, scripts and scenes or stories that you had written but you knew you wanted to do this one, or what was that process like for you?
So I always wanted to act and whatever. Like when I was a little girl, I was like, I want to be a pop star and I want to be an actress and whatever.
Yeah.
I like to perform, And then I kind of became a songwriter by accident. And I just love to write. I've always loved to write. My favorite part about being in the music industry, and like the reason I got into it when I was a little girl, besides just loving to sing, was watching music videos. I loved making music videos. Like I would watch Madonna or Britney Spears or whoever and be like, that's what I want to do. Like I want to make these little mini movies, And then I have always been very hands-on in my music video process. And I really honestly have directed a lot of them, but I never took the credit. Because there's also this kind of thing where it's like, that's what boys do. Like I hire a boy and then I tell him everything that I want him to do. And then he's the director,
Right.
And so like really only in the past like 5 or 6 years was I have been fucking directing for years. And I just never, where I'm like, this is the angle, this is the shot, this is the set design, this is how I want it to look, this, And I just didn't realize that. I thought that directing meant that I had to know about cameras. And I was I don't know anything about cameras, therefore I'm not a director, So I knew that I wanted to do that. And when it came to April Kills the Vibe, it's part of a larger series that I hope to make. I want to make semi-autobiographical series about my experience being a recovering addict female in the cutthroat music industry, because I've had some insane adventures, and it's a pretty gnarly, wacky story. And I want to be able to connect my two passions, which are film and music.
Yeah.
So I'd love to do kind of not a musical as in like burst into songs in the street, but like a music-based series where we look at the actual circumstances and very real, gritty, raw experiences that the creators have in my industry and how they spin that into pop songs. Every sparkly pop song you hear on the radio comes from somebody's real experience, or the good ones do anyway.
Yeah.
Like in the same way that A Star Is Born, where you kind of see them writing the songs and the motivations behind the songs and everything, like it gives the songs a lot more weight when you know the stories behind them.
Yeah.
So I really want to tell that story and have music video fantasies and everything else. And that was the one thing about April Kills the Vibe. Like when I made it, I was like, okay, I'm proud of the writing. I'm proud of my performance. It doesn't really look the way that it doesn't look like the things that I love to watch, because it was very like set in reality. And like, I love fantasy and I love colorful, over the top, fun, surrealist shit. And so that was like the one element that was missing from April Kills the Vibe. But I wanted to make something that wasn't music related, just to be like, look what I can do without using the ace up my sleeve that I'm a hit songwriter, you know?
Right.
And so in anything that I do moving forward, I want to make sure that I can have an element of that sort of surrealist fantasy feel. And so in this musical series, I would love to be able to do music video fantasies and kind of like, drug experiences, that kind of stuff.
That's so intriguing. I want to watch that immediately. I think that your short will be a great calling card. That's kind of what my experience has been like with the Blazing World short film, which did the festival stuff in 2018. And it was good because I didn't like get the team off of the short, but I got a lot of really good interest and a lot of really great conversations stemmed from the short. And then obviously, having the trust there to make the feature version, which was obviously a much bigger scope of work, was just instrumental. Like, you have to have that short, to get the best advice that I got was no one will let you direct the feature unless you make a cool short. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, that's what I've realized. But it's funny, like I got one, like I sent it to someone, and the one piece of feedback that I got that I was like, was like, they watched the short. I sent them a deck for the larger series, which like has no mention at all of sexual assaults or anything, because that's just one piece of one episode. That's not the whole, And the response I got was like, well, it's a little close to I May Destroy You. I'm like, that's a show entirely based around one sexual assault and this woman trying to put the pieces together. This is a 13-minute short that's like a piece of a bigger thing. But because I didn't put any music in it, it's not a great representation of what the bigger project is going to be. And I'm like, damn, do I have to like do another one to be like, okay, this one has music, this is what it's going to be like, You're
going to get so many bullshit opinions that don't matter, and like, don't let them deter you, because you know what the series is visually and what it is and isn't about. Like, if your deck is airtight, I think that will be really helpful. Something that I make too is like a style guide. So something that's kind of like a component to the deck that talks a lot about the visual references and goes a little bit deeper into like the camera work.
For sure. That's exactly what I did. It's like a beautiful like whole thing where it's like, here it is. This is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to sound like. Here's how I want to do a song with every episode. I want blah, blah, blah. Like I went in. It's like a 20-page whole like visual
amazing
spectacular thing.
It's really exciting though.
Yeah. Well, I really, really love your film. And I'm excited. I didn't realize that you started it with a short, and I'm really interested to watch the short version and see how it changed. Did you use any of the original stuff from the short in the full length, or did you completely reshoot stuff?
No, it was completely reshot. Yeah.
Right.
And the short was really a vignette of that character's high school experience.
Mm.
So it's a different time in her life, and
Right.
more than anything, I just wanted to be like kind of visually representative of the world and tonally.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the short is like there's not that much dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very different than the feature.
Right. It's so funny being a rookie in a new industry because I've been like,
You're such a
I
pro in yours.
yeah, it's so funny. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like have a cool idea and I just like
Yeah.
make it happen. I just am like a manifester where I'm like, I want to make something and then I make it happen. But
Yeah.
then I have no idea what to do with it. So it's just like, it's funny. It's kind of fun because, being in the music industry and kind of like winning that rat race after 20 years or whatever, and then being like, well, what's next? I'm just kind of like, I want a challenge. And I like going in and being like, teach me. I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to learn. I want to collaborate,
Yes.
So it's been refreshing, like a new chapter for me.
That's exciting. Well, I mean, of course, just anything that I can help you with.
Thank you.
I don't know. I'm like I've been an actor for a minute, but even navigating the whole, I mean, just getting anything made is a miracle. It really is. It's so
Mm-hmm.
hard to do, and so many moving parts, and the stars have to literally align. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you just hear so many different things from so many different people as to how to go about something, and you just don't really know until you you shake all the trees. You just have to try everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing, was that I was like, it seemed so far away and so out of reach, where I was like, oh, like I would love to direct one day, but it's just like, I don't know how to do that. And then it was like, well, just like hire a DP, write a script, and fucking shoot it, And what's your next step with your furniture? How are you going to save your furniture?
I was just about to say that. I'm like, do I have to get back to my horrible day now? The next step is like talking to like detectives and yeah, like talking to an insurance person. I don't know. So it's like, fuck.
Are there cameras at the storage unit, maybe?
Yeah, we went to the storage unit. We went to the only address that we could find on the internet, and it's literally a fucking railroad. Like, enter at your own risk, cancer-causing chemicals. There is no storage unit at this address.
God.
It's such a nightmare. It's literally what you have. It's like a nightmare that you have about moving.
Right. Fuck.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But think of it as the tower card,
Yeah.
Like, burn it all down and start over.
Burn it down. Resurrect.
Burn it down, indeed. Thank you so much to Bonnie McKee and Carlson Young for being on the Talkhouse podcast, and thanks to you for listening. Go find out more about April Kills the Vibe at aprilkillsthevibe.com, where there's info on where the film is screening next. And look out for The Blazing World coming out later this year. This episode was produced by Melissa Kaplan, and the Talkhouse podcast theme music, as ever, was composed and performed by The Range. For more filmmakers talking film and TV, visit talkhouse.com/film. Subscribe to the Talkhouse podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, and go dig into our archive. I'm Nick Dawson, and until next time, take it easy and stay safe.
This is the frumpiest year of my life, by far. Like, I've never owned sweatpants, and now it's all I own. I used to be like a 4-inch heels every day kind of person, and now I'm just like, fuck it, slides.